Yo, what's up, y'all? Today we got a really cool episode for you guys. We interviewed Cullen Schwarz. He is the founder and CEO of a company called DoneGood. It's a really cool company. They empower consumers basically to drive social change by making sure the companies that they enable folks like us to buy from are creating positive impact in the world beyond their explicit business functions. And so a really interesting interview with a cool guy. And we talk about, his business, his approach to his work, his approach to building his company, the growth that he's had in terms of thinking about productivity at his company, politics in the US, which may or may not be interesting for our international listeners, who knows. But yeah, it's a really cool conversation. We think you'll like it. And at the time that you guys are hearing this, because we recorded this probably, maybe 1 or 2 weeks before this one is out. They are in the final days of their sort of crowdfunding drive. You can find that on startengine.com. The links will be in the show notes to this company. It's a cool one. You guys will enjoy this one. It's got great energy. You can feel the energy from his mission emanating off of him. It's cool.
Denver's more my speed, more my,
Totally.
That's what I was saying. It's like, so you've got all the city stuff, all the concerts and all the shows and all the plays and the arts and things to do. Red Rocks, I can Uber to from my house, best venue in the world. At the same time, I can be on a mountain trail in 20 minutes and forget that I live in a city. It's really best of both worlds.
Are you into hiking? Like, are you a big hiker?
Well, I don't know if I'd say I'm a big hiker. I hike, I go, especially when I'm down here in Slida. My sister's a former rafting guide, stand-up paddleboard guide. So like I can do river stuff with her. I work too damn much in this company. So I can't say I'm not like huge into any of it, but I do, I do all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I love I got into hiking, I guess, over the pandemic, like most people in the US.
Yep.
So we hit like a bunch of the 14ers in Colorado, and that's so fun. Like, I love just like the vibe of waking up super early. Like, the only thing open is like the McDonald's and like freaking, whereas Idaho Springs, and then you got like a bunch of mountains close by on your way out of Denver, so.
For those who don't know, the 14ers are, there are like, what is it, 50, about 52 maybe, about a deck of cards worth of peaks in Colorado that are above 14,000 feet, and there's none that are above 15,000 feet. So those 50 whatever are the tallest. They're the ones above 14,000. So doing a 14er is a thing people like to do out here. I've done a few. I need to get one scheduled. Like I said, so I'm not huge into it, but like I feel like I should do one a summer at least. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I just was saying the other day, like, all right, I really need to get my like 14er of the summer scheduled.
Yes.
And check another one off the list. Some people have done all 50, whatever. I think there's some that you can't hike, you have to rock climb. Let's say, like, okay, I'm a guy, this is a perfect example. I'm a guy who does 14ers. I ain't a guy who's trying to do all of them. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to do one every weekend day of the year. Like, one a summer. I'll do one a summer. That sounds pretty good. I mean,
totally. There was some dude that I saw. He was on like the REI website. He like freaking did a 14er every day for like a summer or something like this, which is like just insane.
That's cool. I'm not that guy. You know what I mean? Like, I want to do some other stuff. I want to go to shows at Red Rocks and then rest the next day. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to have a mix of all the things to do in the Denver, Colorado area.
Yeah. No, I feel, and we're building companies. Like, we're trying to, live our mission. Sometimes I kind of feel like people go too deep into that. I'm like, what are you doing for your job? Like, is your job climbing mountains? Which that's a cool job, but I don't know.
Sure.
It's like,
yeah. Well, no, that's the other thing. I mean, I do spend an inordinate amount of time working too, and I have tried to, I say I'm a recovering workaholic, you know, because I worked in politics, which is, you're working on Capitol Hill. That's like, late nights and whatever. And then during campaign season, if you go out and, you're working on a U.S. Senate race, working on a governor's race, something like that, that's all day, every day. I mean, you're killing yourself, that's what you're signing up for. And then, I stopped working in DC on a Friday packed up my stuff over the weekend, drove to originally Boston, where we used to be headquartered, on a Monday and started work on a Tuesday. So you know what I mean? I haven't had too much time off in it. But in the last couple of years, I have, I just kind of said, if this requires me to kill myself, both like financially and or with work-life balance, then it's not working. You know what I mean? It's like, well, I'm going to do whatever I can to make this thing work. Well, pay yourself nothing, work all day, every day, and destroy yourself, and which I do believe reduces your creativity, your productivity, a lot more science on that, all coming out all the time. So I have in the last couple of years tried to rebalance and say, one, I pay myself somewhat more. Now I'm still making less than I was 8 years ago at my last job in DC, but at least it's less as a percentage as opposed to multiples. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then with work-life balance stuff, I tried to, like I said, I tried to rebalance and work more normal schedules, practice a little more self-care, as they call it. I mean, I just being decent to yourself. And like I said, I try recognizing that I think that does put you in an optimal, you're more productive, more creative. Now, maybe there's a limit to that. Maybe I don't go lay on the beach for 3 months and say, okay, then I'm going to come back for a month and be super creative and productive in that month. I mean, like with everything, I'm sure that's what they call it, work-life balance, right? But trying to balance a little more and, be sane so that I do have, some time to also, I mean, it's your mental health. It's real. I mean, being able to go do the 14er hike or go to shows. I mean, going to shows at Red Rocks is part of my mental health plan. Like it really, you know what I mean? And that said, I do work a lot. So I do in a 14er every day,
So you've had such an interesting career and background that kind of brought you into entrepreneurship.
If you were there every day, I don't know if it's all as interesting as it sounds, but thanks. Yeah.
Well, I think it'd be cool to kind of walk through so your time in politics and advocacy, and then how sort of that kind of work brought you to founding a company. I'm curious specifically, do you feel like it's more leverage to build a company than maybe even involve yourself in civic actions, or do you not think of it that way? I'm just curious about your mindset there.
Yeah, well, if by leverage you mean the power we have to create change, I think the reason I quit that political career to do what I do now is because I believe, you see this kind of stuff on our website. I believe it. I think it's true that the dollars we spend, the consumer spending, is the world's most powerful force for change, because we are in a supply and demand economy, and everything that consumers demand, we have total power. We can make capitalism, we can make market economies, whatever we want, because whatever we demand, the market supplies. And so if we use our purchasing decisions to demand, right? Okay, so what do consumers demand? Well, they demand these kind of products. Market supplies those kind of products. Well, we demand, kind of these price points. Market figures out how to find those price points. Well, if we demand, more products that are made with living wage jobs, then there'll be more living wage jobs and less poverty in the world. And if we demand products that are made in ways that fight climate change instead of cause it, the market supplies more fight against climate change. And it's happening. The CSR departments, for the term social enterprise, social impact didn't exist, back when I was in college, right? Now that's a thing you can study and get a degree in, right? The explosion of the number of social enterprises over the last decade. There was a report, social enterprise census that just came out last year, says there's now 11 million. And the World Economic Forum said, this shows that this is one of the most important and impactful movements of our time, the social enterprise movement. And of course, so then the more we choose to support social enterprises, the more of them there are, the more of them will succeed, the more other businesses will follow suit. And then even major corporations are noticing this. 10 years ago, corporate social responsibility, well, or at least certainly 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't even corporate social responsibility, ESG, environment, social governance, and these kind of terms, that wasn't a thing. It wasn't on the radar. It was just make money, maximum profit. But now major corporations are seeing that, there is growing consumer demand, all kinds of research on this now. More and more consumers, especially millennials, Gen Z, and then even now Gen Z, they are changing their Gen X parents' mindsets on things, and so you can see in the polling and in the data that just more and more people understand that, who I give my money to when I buy something or for any reason, I'm helping them do more of whatever it is they do. Well, what are they doing? They got people locked in poverty, making stuff in some sweatshop somewhere. They're causing climate change. I'm funding that. I'm funding that with my dollar. And so people thinking more about that, moving their purchases. So now you got in 2011, less than 15% of the S&P 500 were issuing an annual corporate social responsibility report. Now, we're basically almost to 100%. It's somewhere in the 90s. They basically all are doing that now. So this change is occurring. Consumers have the power to accelerate the pace of that change. We are doing it. But then, so where DoneGood comes in, Forbes called us the Amazon for social good. We're the site where we're just trying to make it quick, easy. You can shop for all sorts of kinds of products that you want: clothing, coffee, bed sheets, shampoo. We're working to build out as many companies and as many categories as quickly as we can. We've got like 120 plus companies on the site now. We screen them all for social and environmental impact. So you can just come and buy what you need and know that, these companies pay good wages. These companies use really eco-friendly practices. A lot of them are supporting other good cause with a portion of the purchases, like helping women escape forced sex trafficking or donations to orphanage or all sorts of other good things too. So every dollar you're spending, it fits with your beliefs and you're making the world better.
So why do you think that, or how do you think that consumers have sort of upped their understanding? Is it just access to information? Why are we more, educated on these topics?
Well, yeah, I think there's more information about it. I mean, I'll date myself a little bit. I mean, I was an undergrad at the turn of the century, not 99 to 03. And it was in the 90s was the first wave of sweatshop kind of awareness and activism. That was really, now people talk about ethical, sustainable fashion. They try to, frame it in the positive. Back then it was anti-sweatshop, right? But so there was a lot of, the media did a good job of reporting, in the 90s, all sorts of stories and exposés coming out, and then later documentaries and things like this, where in the first part of the 20th century, it was all, you bought whatever you needed from people in your town. And, before it was always, you trade with who's around you. And then in the 20th century, we figured out mass production. And, there's even some, you can crank out more stuff faster and cheaper. There's some benefit. And so then the world went that way. And then all of a sudden, right, because of the, huge companies are trying to maximize shareholder return every quarter. So how do we make it a little cheaper? How do we make it a little faster?
Right.
You start putting factories overseas where there's not regulation and protection, and you're paying people poverty wages,
right.
And, doing terrible stuff to the environment. Yeah. And it turns out, that's super cheap and super fast. And just people, we didn't know that. All of a sudden, there was more reporting about hey, so a lot of the stuff we buy in stores is made by people living in terrible conditions, working super long hours, 6 or 7 days a week, and earning next to nothing, or literal human trafficking, modern day slavery, and just terrible stuff. And so that was an initial awakening. And that's that. I think that's just continued. There's just more and more information about that. And I think just a more consciousness about, right. It used to be sort of, in my non-economic dealings, right? Well, I should volunteer and donate and march. And nowadays, post on social media and vote and do all these other things. But in the economy, there was just this prevailing, that's business, this mindset, the old Milton Friedman philosophy. Businesses are supposed to maximize profit at all costs, just extract maximum profit, increase shareholder return. And I'm supposed to work wherever they pay me the most. And I'm supposed to buy whatever's the cheapest. You just, here you're a moral person. And over here in the economy, you just do whatever. But in the economy is where we spend most of our time. I mean, if we're working 40 hours a week, we spend a majority of our time here. And decisions we make as business owners, or decisions we make as consumers or investors, or even just where to work, that actually probably has more impact on the world than the other stuff. I'm not saying don't do the other stuff. You know what I mean? Nonprofit work is super important. A lot of amazing nonprofits doing really great things. And it just is the case. Americans donated $327 billion to charity last year, and we spent over $14 trillion buying stuff. So that just means that if 2% of the dollars we spend could help reduce poverty, could help fight climate change, could help make the world better in some way, 2% of the dollars we spend can do as much good as all the donations to all the nonprofits in the country. So it's just, people are just becoming more aware of the fact that, what I do in the economy makes a big difference. And I actually have a lot of power with the dollars I spend to change business behavior. And if you want to, you want to address climate change, is DC going to do it? They haven't. So what do you need to do? You need to change business behavior. How are you going to do that? Chasing consumer dollars. I mean, that's what gets people to change. You make the right thing to do, the profitable thing to do. And I think there's just more awareness of that and more desire. Like even one big thing that's also along with consumer spending that's driving businesses to change is attracting workers. Millennials, Gen Z in particular, are recognizing like, hey, my job's not just my job. It's where I spend the majority of my time on it. How do I want to spend my time on it? Well, I want to do something meaningful and purposeful. And I don't just want to, I don't know, do whatever random thing that gets me some money. I'd like to do something that I feel good about doing, And so there's just more of that. And then that changes business behavior. That's, BlackRock, one of the world's largest institutional investor, they said 2018, they put out a huge, earth-shattering letter that was like, we can't do business with companies that can't articulate some kind of social mission because you'll have a hard time attracting consumer spending, attracting investment because there's more impact investing, people who want to invest their dollars in stuff that they feel good about. And then there's, but one of the big thing that they mentioned too was also it's like, you're gonna have a hard time attracting talented workers, people who want to work for your company, especially as, millennials and Gen Z become a bigger percentage of the workforce because they want to work at something that they believe in, So yeah, people are more aware and people are using their economic power. They want to know that their decisions are in line with their beliefs,
How did you kind of develop like your value system and how are you like resisting the allure of growth at all costs in your business? The pull of investors, maximizing enterprise value, like how are you kind of able to stay true to your mission and like your values?
Yeah, because we like baked this stuff in from the start. So first, we're incorporated as a public benefit corporation, which is like a traditional C corp in most ways. And now it's becoming more mainstream, so investors are more aware and comfortable with investing in that kind of company. It does also mean though we have a social mission baked into our charter, and that our responsibility to pursue that social mission is on par with our responsibility to earn investors a return, right? And so that means if we can make decisions that are not necessarily for maximizing the bottom line or maximizing shareholder return if it's in pursuit of our social mission. Now, that said, we've also set all this up so that our social impact and business success are not in conflict, right?
Right.
Like, and on purpose, right? Because that's supposed to be the point. So what's our social mission? Driving consumer dollars to amazing brands that are paying living wages and empowering people and investing in communities and doing good for the environment. And how do we make money? What's our business success? The same way, right? Like these things are one of the same because we don't charge our brands anything up front because we always want to drive more value to them than they're providing to us. That's part of the point, right? Is to make them more successful, never have them paying for stuff if we're not driving sales their way. And so we earn a percentage of the sales and then, okay, so cool. What's our social mission? Driving sales to these businesses. How do we make money and be successful as a business? By driving those, sales and earning a percentage. So we've tried to just make sure everything was set up that way. It's all aligned. So now there's no, it's not in conflict. We're not trying to do good at the expense of our business. That's the same thing.
That's cool. So in like practice, they sound like tactical operational decisions. You're not actually having a trade-off between like that social mission and driving value. That's cool.
Not really. And even, we've been like conscious to surround ourselves with investors who are impact investors who believe in the cause and are in it for the right reasons too, that's maybe somewhere you have to like, you want to be a little discerning, but that's also, I think the good thing about being a social enterprise is, you have on the one hand, maybe that makes it tougher to raise from like sort of traditional, I want a super quick return in a super short amount of time. On the other hand, there's impact investors who specifically are looking to invest in companies like this.
Yes.
Or, I mentioned talent, people wanting to work here. Like I take it as a real compliment. It's really touching. Well, like at our last job opening last summer, we had, while kind of the news reports is, companies are having a hard time finding people to work there. We had 1,200 applicants and we didn't even I think we paid $100 on LinkedIn to put it out. And we did some other, posting on job boards that reach diverse audiences because that's important to us. But we didn't we didn't pay.
Yeah.
We email our email list. Everybody, a ton of applicants just from our email list, our customer base, people who are in our community. And so there's those advantages too, right? Consumers who want to shop with companies like yours, people who want to work at companies like yours, investors who want to invest in companies like yours. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, we've tried to be conscious from the very start to set it all up so that we would avoid, issues like that.
So how did you kind of like develop like this value set? Like, are your folks or your family like very politically active or aware? Like, why are you this person?
Well, isn't that a good question? I don't know, man. You, me, and my therapist I'll jump out a call. We could unpack, we could unpack stuff for a little while, I guess. My folks were teachers. They were special ed teachers. So I don't know. They were doing a job that's, I think, trying to, do something caring and good for the world. My dad then became a principal. My mom, kindergarten, first grade teacher also as well. But so they were in education. I don't know. I think they probably try to teach me to be a nice guy and be fair and want fairness to exist in the world or whatever. I do remember when I was like 13, the state legislature in Michigan tried to pass an anti-teacher union bills. It was like, you can't go on strike, but also it's like they ripped away healthcare benefits that had been negotiated. I'm like at the negotiating table, a lot of times it's like, okay, well, we won't take the raise or we'll take a very small raise, but because we get the great benefits. Well, and then one day the legislature just unilaterally says, okay, all that stuff that's been negotiated over decades, we don't like it. It's expensive. We're taking it away. Like, well, all right, you're going to give us the raises back that we gave up for all that? You know what I mean? This was all negotiated, and they, so it was really, seemed unjust and unfair. And, my folks were like involved at various points. Each of them were like the union stewards at their building or whatever. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess that had some kind of impact. I generally think when I was working in politics, when I was working on Capitol Hill, we had a work retreat, and somebody said, or the person leading the exercises or whatever said, write down in one sentence why you do this kind of work. Why are you in politics? And I wrote like instantly, because people who work for a living deserve to have a decent life and deserve, those are the words I wrote. But deserve to like share in the wealth they're creating. The fact that we have like over 60% of people in the richest country on earth living paycheck to paycheck say they can't afford a $400 unexpected expense of $400. That's weird, man. That's not just. Yeah. It's not cool. It's not fair. When you talk about having people who are earning real like poverty, I mean, the minimum wage in this country is a poverty wage. Also overseas, where you've got even less regulation and worker protection, and things like slavery is still. I touched on it a little. It's called human trafficking now. We think that's a sanitized term. Let's call it. It is. It's modern day slavery. It's still a $150 billion a year industry. There's more slaves on the planet now than at any time in human history. And like, when you know those things, well, shit, I guess, boy, it sure would be nice if I could not participate in systems that supported that. And I will tell you even more of the like backstory. When I was an undergrad, I got involved in a group called United Students Against Sweatshops. And so we would get our universities to put codes of conduct in their apparel contracts. So whatever company wanted to make the university's licensed apparel, the hoodies with the logo on it, the university logo on it, and all the bookstores and everywhere else they saw it. Those are, for a big university, that's big money. That's a big contract. So the codes of conduct that we got our universities to put in those contracts said, if you want to bid on them, then you need to be able to demonstrate you're paying above poverty wages, that the working conditions are safe, no forced overtime over 50 hours a week. They just basic protections to say, okay, the customer, in this case is the university, we don't want our products made in sweatshop conditions. So we're only going to do business with companies who can demonstrate that they're not doing that. And so then I'm like, 20, that was really exposure to the power of consumerism as a tool for activism and for making the world. But that's both, again, voting's important. Don't donate to nonprofits, volunteer, do all that stuff. And at the same time, this is neither of those. This is a different thing. This is a consumer just using market demand to impact people's lives and make the world better. And I thought, that's what I really thought. Like, well, what if you had a couple million individuals doing this? And what if one day, like, you use market forces where businesses were competing to be more ethical, to advertise what good companies they were, you know what I mean? And then I actually wrote a paper about this in college, like sort of the modest proposal or whatever, the grand vision was like, yeah, so if you could, the new utopian ideal for the next century, right? Like 20th century capitalism and communism fought, that was the kind of story of the 20th century. And then with some fascism in there. But like in the new century, what if we, what if it didn't matter anymore? Like what if in capitalism, though, businesses were competing to be more ethical and pay better wages and to be better for the environment. And then one day, all the businesses in the world are paying amazing wages, and maybe they're all worker-owned co-ops, and then, well, if that were the case, like extreme global poverty would be a thing of the past if every business were doing that. And if every business in the world were as sustainable as the ones on DoneGood right now, well, then climate change wouldn't be a thing. We'd blow those Paris Accord goals out of the water. You know what I mean? And so that, okay, well, after this guy's pie in the sky, the day that every business is like this, yeah, I don't know how long that'll take. Change does happen quick these days, but like we're on the way. You know what I mean? And every time we decide to work for a better company or spend our money with a better company or invest in better companies, then we keep taking the steps toward that world. And that just seems to me, especially so, we kind of touched on it. I worked for, a decade or so in politics and on DC, and there were, what I'm talking about, using consumer spending to move the market, just seems like a faster, more plausible path for change than major stuff coming out of DC. Look, I worked there for all that time. Well, I think there's a lot of good people that are trying really hard to do good work, and it's such incremental change. You know what I mean? It's
right.
Like, I spent 3 years of my life finally getting the bill passed, and once it gets passed, it's so watered down. And so we made one small area of the federal budget slightly less shitty. And that's 3 years of my life. And look, it's important. I'm glad there's people down there with energy, young kids, doing that. It's important work. Somebody's got to do it. It's noble. It's a good cause. But it's just, it feels more like fighting the other side to an endless tire, this small incremental change. I just think the more plausible path for big sweeping change is consumers shifting their spending. And because like I said, it's working, it's happening. And we have the power to make it happen more quickly.
Like this is like 10 years ago, but I interned for Deval Patrick, who's the governor of Massachusetts. I worked in the constituent services desk, so I'm handling all the, hey, there's a power line down and blah, blah, blah. And snow people haven't come, and like, you're just like kind of just like fighting fires, but to me, that's like, that's real politics. But you kind of take a step back and you're like, damn, if like the government is dealing with just like putting out, like how much of their bandwidth is dealing with this random stuff, and how much do they have left over to like enact like, reform or change or drive an agenda, it's like 20%. And then they're running for re-election already,
well, so
that's
it's crazy. Exactly right. That's just what I was going to say. And then you have, especially if you're in the House, in Senate, at least you have like 6-year terms, and you don't have to be running for re-election quite all the time. I mean, you kind of are a little all the time, but you're really hitting the hard last 2 years. In the House, you're up every 2 years. You're never not running. You are in cycle every time. And there's just the systemic stuff. I mean, I saw it. I don't know how too many people know about call time. Call time is dialing for dollars. And members of Congress, especially if you're in the House, and especially if you're in a competitive seat. I worked for a member of Congress who basically was like the staff always trying to find him and fight him to get him to go to call time. They literally just sitting there with a list, calling up rich people, asking for money. Yeah. And the system, I mean, that's what it is. And the system we have, requires it, because this is how campaign. You got to buy TV ads now, or other digital ads, and you got to get your message out. Well, to do that, we say you have to go raise money. Well, to do that, you have to call rich people all day. And, he actually said he hated it. He didn't want to do it. He goes, when I was a boy and dreamed of being in Congress, I didn't know I was going to be a glorified telemarketer. That's the thing. People are like, oh, all the politicians are crooks. They're all dirty. They're all I'm like, that wasn't my experience. My experience, there's a lot of really good people who got in this for the right reasons. They're trying to do good stuff. And we got a system. I mean, there ain't, it's the system's fault. There's no other way to do it. You got them. You have to raise so many millions of dollars. So yeah, we need campaign finance reform, and we need independent redistricting. So we had to have these gerrymandered House districts, and there's the systemic stuff that needs to change. But when you got certain people who benefit from the system, 100%. It's a fulfilling prophecy. Like rich people want to maintain. And I'll also say, that wasn't my experience. That, you know, any of the people I worked for or that I saw, you know, other members were like, hey, I'll vote for this if you give me money. It's not like that. But you're on the phone with them and they get to tell you what they think. And you and me are on the phone with them, telling them what we think, right? It's just access and being able to communicate your point of view in a way that other people don't. And so people with money like that system. They get access and they get special treatment. And so then you got to raise money from those people. Well, are you for changing the system to reduce max, right? Like, shit don't change. And so,
yes.
Like, I think we need systemic reform. There's people fighting for that. And I just think if it's a race between getting that or a race between us all moving our purchases to awesome companies, this is just faster and more plausible and easier and better and more effective, you know?
Totally. So, yeah. And for worse, I almost feel like companies today resemble like little tribes, you know, most of your time. And you mentioned it today as well, like how most of your time you spend that you're awake with your work. And, you know, like, that's where your relationships are forged. It's where like there's social influence. And I feel like you actually can drive change and find identity at work more so than even like in your civic life. Like, you know, like you're voting for like your council member or for your school board or for your, you know, rep, but you're like, okay, I'm not going to see this guy or girl. Like, I'm not, you know, I may see them once at a thing, but you see like your colleagues and you can influence them and you can support certain missions with your company. I definitely agree with you. I feel like companies have more power. I mean, for better or for worse than like, I mean, many aspects of government, you know, and driving change. And I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe that's what the framers intended, you know?
Well, you know, I think to a degree they intended things to need to move slowly and get broad-based support.
Yes.
So like, you know, a small number of people or one guy couldn't just, you know, drastically change things. And I think that they also assumed more of a collegial and, you know, I mean, it's just, you know, obviously they didn't foresee this level of polarization or this kind of media. You know what I mean? Like, obviously there's a lot of stuff that just isn't possible to foresee 250 years later, you know what I mean? And so now, like, again, I just do want to keep saying I'm not one of these folks who then says like, oh, the whole system's true, don't vote. Please keep voting. Please keep staying involved. I still donate to candidates, you know what I mean? Like, it's still important because if we pull out, I see a lot of people who care about issues like climate change and economic equality, like kind of saying, well, my party's not progressive enough, or this is all a bunch of BS, or I'm going to vote, you know, third party and stuff. And it's like, well, okay. Or they're not going to vote at all. But like, then, you know, I come from Michigan. We're talking 11,000 votes between Trump and Hillary in 2016. I think it was 70,000 across 3 states. And in Michigan that year, more people, there was 11,000 difference. More than 11,000 showed up and voted and left President blank.
That's insane.
You know what I'm saying? So like, they were like, you know, I don't know. I don't like either of them, so I'm not going to vote. Okay. Then you get Trump. You know what I mean? So like, I want to be careful. Look, I think the stuff I'm talking about, done good, consumer spending, where you work, all these things that the impacts you can make in the economy are where more of your power lies and is it more effective. At the same time, I don't want to be any part of causing the dissolution that also gets people who care about these issues to not vote. So I think we're being both pretty clear about it. I just also want to be very clear that I'm not one of those people that says, screw it, don't vote, boycott the whole thing. Then we start going backwards, you know.
100%. So, and there's more turnout among the older generations, like by default, and then things. Yeah. So I'm curious, like I'm not educated on this subject matter, but I've like tried to game out like what happens if we have like really hard term limits. And like politics is a thing that you do for 5 to 10 years, and then you go into like your normal life, you know. So you're not like you serve your country, you represent your, you know, neighbors, and then you go and you build a business or you go and contribute to the economy. Like, what's your take on that?
Hey, by the way, if I could, I want to answer that question because I think that's interesting. Could I do a shameless plug for our crowdfunding campaign here real quick too?
Yes,
because like that's an important thing. And I know that this is going to air with about 3 days before, so I've been kind of thinking, well, when can I bring this up in conversation? Instead, I'm just going to say, look, can I do the plug?
I'm like, did I offend him? Is he super? Anti-term limits? No, go ahead, please. Let's talk about your crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah. Let me get this in before I answer the question.
Yes.
Well, because actually I have mixed feelings about it, and I'll tell you why. Because I think there's pros and cons. But we have a crowdfunding campaign going right now, and it's an equity crowdfunding campaign, which I don't know if how many folks are familiar with that. Basically, people are familiar with Kickstarter, that kind of crowdfunding, but that's like you give an organization some money and then maybe you get a free T-shirt or something like that. With equity crowdfunding, it allows people to actually buy stock in companies that are too small to be on like corporate stock exchanges. You know what I mean? You could actually, and anyone could do it. And there used to be rules about accredited investors. Essentially, like if you weren't a public company, you kind of could only raise money from rich people. Accredited investor means rich, kind of, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So, but then that was the thing. I mean, people were like, wait a sec, so I can give money to a company like Kickstarter, but I can give them $100 and get a T-shirt, but I can't buy $100 worth of stock. Like, why not? You know what I mean? And so they changed the regulations in like 2015. And so now there's equity crowdfunding as well. And so we're having an equity crowdfunding campaign so people can actually invest in DoneGood, and looking to raise money so that we can grow the movement, grow the impact, grow our community, invest in marketing so more people know about us.
Yeah.
And we appreciate opportunities like this for that as well, of course.
Totally.
Adding more brands to the site, so there's more selection and things like that. But also like the Kickstarter type crowdfunding, you also like get things. So we're just getting discounts and gift cards on our site for the investments, So we figure like, and even small investments really help, like even $100, because one, it adds up, but two, there's goals on the crowdfunding site where if we get enough number of investors, and it doesn't matter how much they invest, it's just the number of people who invest, then the crowdfunding site like gives you more promotion to their email list and on their homepage. And so then it basically like, even like $100 investment like yields more promotion where we reach more people and raise more money from other people too. So it really has a big impact. And so, we say because every purchase on our site helps people, lifting themselves out of poverty. It helps support businesses fighting climate change. Like it's something where the investment, if it were a donation to a nonprofit, it'd be a good donation, but it's an investment and you get discounts on our site where you can save money. Anyway, you get some money back as you're making purchases. So startengine.com is the site, startengine.com/offering/DoneGood.
This is what I love about talking to like founders is you can feel like for the good ones, like their mission, like the energy from their mission, like emanating from them when they speak. And that's really inspiring to people, it's really inspiring. So
I appreciate you saying that. And the flip side is true too, right? Like I'm dealing with, my computer busted before this and I got some company that's trying to charge me for something I don't want, like you get in the day to day, this and that, that's happening this morning. You know what I'm saying? Like you get in the day to day and your to-do list and all this, like it's no matter what, it's like stuff is a grind and a job and there's menial bullshit.
Oh yeah.
And so, but being able to come on podcasts is a time where I step back and get to talk about why I think this is important and the purpose. And this long-term grandiose vision where every company in the world is doing great stuff and the world is a utopian place. But like, okay, that's the stuff that feeds my soul and reminds me, you know what I mean? Like, I bet you think it's inspiring to other people. It's inspiring to me, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like, okay, for its stuff, these opportunities, and you have to make sure to take them proactively yourself. But the podcast is an opportunity where I have to stop, breathe, slow down, remember the big picture and why would I do all this stuff. And then after this podcast, now the rest of the day, even with this other garbage I'm dealing with, I'm going to feel better and more energized. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. So, I feel fired up every time I am on the podcast and get to talk to folks.
Yeah.
It's sweet. Yeah. And that's why we try to do them on Friday. You have good vibes heading into the close of the week, and then you're thinking about things all over the weekend when you're kind of chilling. You feel good, re-energized for Monday. Because we found like if we do them on like Tuesday or Wednesday, I mean, sometimes you have to work with people's schedules, but it's just a thing they got to get off their list, which I get, and the energy is just not. It doesn't make their best self shine in my view.
I think that's really smart because who doesn't feel better on Friday? You know what I'm saying? And isn't it interesting that it's like it's all, these days are arbitrary, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like, like it's all arbitrary constructs. 7, because the Bible said, and we're still doing 7,
Totally. And
like,
the whole counting is so arbitrary. It is. It's so arbitrary.
Completely arbitrary,
Yes.
It really makes you realize, because it's like, oh, by Friday afternoon, or Friday, people are more relaxed because it's like, well, I'm heading into the weekend. I don't have to. I mean, but on Tuesday, no, this all has to happen, and I have to do this, and I'm but like when you have something where but I have a dentist appointment I have to go to. I'll be damned, the company didn't die. You know what I'm saying? But if you don't have that dentist appointment, you're like, oh, I couldn't possibly. That's, I guess, when I talk about like the reformed workaholism, is for like 8 years, I've been doing this. Every quarter is the most important quarter, and the company might die.
Yes.
And you know what I mean? And like, okay, well, at some point after 8 years, you have to, it can't be that every quarter you have to work kind of all day, every day. Like at some point, then, I mean, shit, like, you just, it can't be that way. And so, it like, I mentioned my therapist, so I started seeing a therapist 2.5 years ago. I always like to talk about it now because it's been so good, and like realizing how much stress is self-inflicted and how you can still have the same ambitions and the same goals, work on the same things, but you control. See, like I'm doing it right now as I say this. You know what I mean? It's happening to me. I feel the change physically.
Yes.
You can change, the tone with which you do any of this. Instead of, at 6 p.m., I'm like, oh, I should keep working more. I don't want to, but I should. Look, you have a choice. Stop right now if you want. Go ahead. And it'll probably be okay. Or say, nah, I'm good. I'm good for a couple more. I want to do this. I believe in this. And, I don't necessarily like want in the immediate term to do the work, but yes, overall, I want to do this thing I don't necessarily want to do right now. I want to do it. Like, I'm really trying to recognize that, like, I don't ever want to do something I don't want to do. That doesn't mean I'm not doing anything uncomfortable or taxing in the moment. It's saying, look, either decide you don't want to do this or know that you do. You know what I mean? Know that it's worth it, and you're going to keep doing it. And then you're going to stop at 8 p.m. and you're going to get some dinner, and then you're going to relax. Okay, cool. There's just no reason to do it with that cloud that you put over your own head. And I got to tell you, man, finally at like my early 40s, I'm starting to, that's why I like, if I can talk about this stuff, there's some kids in their 20s listening and they start therapy or just are able to absorb some of this stuff, with or without it. Like, I think therapy is always important. I think it's good for everybody. I think everybody should do it personally. And that's my recommendation. But even still, just being able to recognize how in control of your tone you are, and you do all the same stuff and you just decide what tone you're keeping with yourself and how you talk to yourself. And if you would ever talk to yourself, we talk to a friend, the way you're talking to yourself, these things are like, I'm getting good at learning now. Shit, man, maybe some people can learn it in their 20s. They'll just be a little ahead of the game.
100%. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you, but I have so many thoughts on the subject. I mean, I totally agree and like hear everything you're saying. And I feel like these are lessons that you kind of learn. It's hard to like get them. You can intellectually understand them, but I kind of think you have to you just work through them and feel what it feels like. It's just,
it's about remembering them as often as you can and knowing 100%. You ain't always going to remember them. It's practice. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. Even as I say, I even try to get out of this kind of linear thinking where it's like, well, if someone learned in their 20s, it'll be better. It's like, I don't know, man. In my 20s, I was kind of just on fire. I didn't mind being a workaholic. 100%. So maybe it was fine that I was that way. You know what I mean? Maybe it's better I learn these things now and do the practice I'm practicing now instead of then. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's not even, there's no linear sort of like start, finish, and you try to get that's another big thing is right with this sort of stuff is like, I guess I would feel like enlightenment was one more thing to achieve and be good at. And then anytime I was a failure and I was something to talk negatively about myself. So then that doesn't help. That's counterproductive, man. It's like, listen, we're human beings. There's ups and downs. And yeah, you just try to remember the things that you found to be helpful and help you feel peace, happiness, and like I said, productivity. I think I'm better now that I'm not working from 6 to 8 p.m. with the cloud over my head and and instead saying, listen, sometimes maybe you should stop at 6. You don't have to do this right now. Get some rest, get it in the morning, or sometimes, or saying, no, that's cool. Yeah, I thank you for giving myself the choice, reminding myself I have a total choice right now. And yeah, no, it's cool. I'm going to do it today. And just doing it with in a lighter way. You know what I mean? Like, oh man.
100%. Yeah. Like, I mean, you mentioned like shows. So I imagine you're into music and like, and I often think like your life has like a rhythm to it, which is like a function of all the routines you have, and it's like, I try to keep the rhythm of my life, like within a basically balance that I can run it for a long time. Cause I mean, I was the same way. I would work 12 hours in a day and the next day I'm smoked. Like, you know what I mean? Like you show up, you're kind of at least I would get kind of resentful. I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I working this hard? Like, is this worth it? Like, I love the company, I love the mission, but you feel burnt out. And then you have to, at least for me, same thing with working out. Like, I love working out. I love hiking. I love lifting weights. But then if you do that too much, the next day you're like, I don't want to go to the gym.
Or if you wake up to an alarm after 6 hours of sleep to get that workout in, man, you just did something super unhealthy in order to do something healthy, but it's in conflict,
100%.
Like that. Some of these things, I even feel a little self-conscious saying it because it's like I come from like, the American Midwest work ethic. Being a good worker is a good thing to be. And sort of like sleeping is like lazy. If you sleep late, you're lazy. Like, as opposed to like, man, I think sleep is like, and more and more science coming out. We can point to science now on this stuff. Like, it's not some hippy dippy stuff. It's like science tells us like sleep is like, I mean, I'm making up this number exactly, but it's, like 80% of physical and mental health, man. Like getting sleep. I try not to wake up to an alarm, and I still, I wake up and I still wake up 7 a.m. or whatever if I go to bed on time, or, you know what I mean? Like, but so, you know what I mean? Like, cause that waking up to that alarm when you're in the middle of the sleep cycle, you're groggy and you're weird, or when you're overworked and you're tired, even from lack of sleep or just working too long hours, like your brain is not in its most creative and most productive. So cool. I worked 12 hours at 60% instead of working 6 hours at 100%. You know what I mean? Like what, and so I do feel like, even like I said, there's still that part of me that feels self-conscious about like kind of the old school thing. Like, this guy's lazy, this guy's a hippie, but like, I don't care, man. It's true. Like I said, and the science is back and all this stuff. I just saw just yesterday, I saw a thing that was like, people who take all their vacation days are twice as likely to get promoted. Yeah. You want to know why? Because they're getting refreshed and they're resetting. And I swear, like the more, I used to be all in the head, you know what I mean? Analytical thought and strategizing and figuring out the best thing. I was a philosophy major. I don't know. I'm proud to mention that. I guess so. It's like all here, but man, so much of life is being in that like centered place where your soul feels right, and if you feel like that kind of rest and at ease, like the days I get 8 hours of sleep, I tend to feel positive about my life. Sometimes I'm like, it's sad and everything sucks. And I'm like, yeah, you stayed out too late. You got 5.5 hours, dumbass. You know what I mean? Like, this ain't a mystery. You know what I mean? But so that goes into your work. Like, you know what I mean? Are you like coming up with an awesome new off the wall idea that's going to make people laugh and get them excited and make them attracted to want to work with your company or do business with your company or buy your products? Or are you like phoning it in because you're brain dead, because you're working too much? You know what I mean? And it just is true. It's just real.
So one thing that I think about is Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos. Like, we can comment on their business practices aside. There's lots of problems with those companies. But I think about like they have 168 hours in their day. I mean, in their week. So do we, but like, so the maximum amount that we all have is like 168 in a given week, but their decisions are way more leveraged. And so, you can sleep 0 hours a week, you'll still get the same amount of time, but that doesn't alone explain for the differences in scale, if you just work,
of course,
right? And so to me, it's like everything that you can do to get better quality decision-making is the key. And so, it's not even, for me at least, it's not even about like output. It's like, how can I make better decisions? And I just try to focus everything on that. And
better decisions, better ideas, more creative ideas, and I get down on myself for that too, because it's like, we want to just do like fun stuff, cool stuff, interesting stuff, creative stuff. And it's hard, especially when we have a small team. And so like, I was like, telling my friend, oh man, I should be doing more TikToks. Like I'm down on myself. I'm kicking myself. Or I should just be doing, she's like, man, I know. And at a big company, like there's people who everyone has like one job and you have like 20, you know what I mean? And so I try to like grant myself some like, okay, that's true. And still like, even among all the bullshit, like this is where I said, it's like, oh, well, I don't have time to just stop and try to be creative for an hour because I got so much on my to-do list. But we scheduled this podcast a few weeks ago and I'm taking an hour now to do this. So like, yes, you definitely can take an hour to just go for a walk and try to think of creative stuff or just get the team on the phone. We have we don't do it enough, but I read this thing about Aerosmith, the band. They had a regular meeting called the Dumb Ideas meeting. And the whole point was to say stuff that you couldn't provide good ideas or like ideas you thought that you would do. It had to be dumb ideas that you didn't think that you would do. Like really crazy off the wall stuff. That sounds dumb. And yeah, 95% of the stuff in those meetings we would never do. And they said 5% we would, or it sparked a conversation about another conversation that would get to something that they would be like, that's awesome. And it's more creative because they're purposely trying to have it be all outside the box. So we tried to implement that, try to take more time to do that kind of stuff. Cause that's really like, what are people attracted to, especially like in the social media age or whatever. It's like it's not like the days of like the Mad Men sort of like buy a fork because it's like like people hate that shit. What do they want? They want funny memes. You know what I mean? They want funny memes. They want to know this company is run by people I like.
Yes,
that's it. You know what I'm saying? And so like 100%. We're over here like doing business and checking off the to-do list and stuff. I don't know yet. Are you having fun? Because if you are, other people are going to have fun and they're going to want to be around your business. And that's like more true now than ever, you know?
I so believe that. And I mean, that's something where like, I was just talking to one of our sales folks and I was like, dude, like sometimes you got to stay at a nice ass hotel, even when you're flying on business. Like even if you're using the company card, you should have to stay at a nice ass hotel because like, then you feel confident and like proud of what you're selling. And then you're going to like, that's going to emanate. But if you're like, I don't know, like sleeping somewhere shitty, you're not going to get a good night's rest. You're going to be kind of embarrassed maybe, and like, I don't know, say what we will about like materialism in our culture. Like that's important. It's important to feel confident about yourself,
Well, and to have the clean, comfortable bed so you get 8 hours sleep. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's the thing with all this. And actually, I'm going to tie this back to DoneGood a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I mean, look, it's always easy to say this stuff on a podcast. And I will also say, I don't think I've done a good enough job of creating the space for creativity and not just doing the to-do list and then doing this, going through the motions of the same things we always do because it's kind of the easiest thing. So like, I also want to like commiserate with other entrepreneurs out there because that's another thing. Like, you see other companies, other entrepreneurs on social media, you hear them on podcasts. Yeah, of course. Like we have tough times. All this stuff I'm saying, this is stuff I try to say to myself and I would like to be better at. And I also I used to talk to myself and say, why aren't you doing that? You suck at that. And now I can say, wait a second. I think I'm like 70% good at it. First of all, maybe you can just like, what I mean? Like, and then if you'd like to get 30% better, cool. Start today and just, try to do better. That's the first thing. Second thing is like, yeah, man, I think I was into the struggle porn. Like yes. I saw that in, I don't know what, some startup newsletter, some entrepreneur newsletter I saw.
That's my belief. It's like, it's both the like Instagram, like look at my Lamborghini and also like, look at how hard I'm working. I'm not eating and I'm on like, I don't know what the dosage of Adderall is, but I'm on this insane dose of stimulants. Like that's neither is good, It's like, yeah, it's crazy.
And in my case, it was, look how awesome I didn't pay myself the first year. And then I paid myself like $35,000 the next couple of years. And like, like I get it, you're trying to keep all the money in the company. You really want the company to be successful. And like, there's a balance on that. Like with everything. Yeah, look, I'm fine to take a pay cut from what I used to be making to make this work and make it be as successful as possible. And like you're saying, I mean, the equivalent of the hotel, I mean, I was house sitting and then I was living with a 75-year-old couple. And then I lived with some college kids in a college house for $600 a month in Boston. And like, you know what I mean? Like at what point does that, that grind make you kind of like tired? There's the tired from not getting enough sleep. And then there's the tired from like a couple years of you like doing that kind of stuff and not being in just like a decent housing environment. You know what I mean? And that, how much does that affect your work? I had a guy, so we got into an incubator program when we first started out, and we had a mentor there, and he said, there's no honor in the struggle. And again, my Midwest sort of, Protestant upbringing was like, what do you mean there's no honor in struggle? Of course there's honor in struggle. My grandpa fought in World War II and my dad put himself through school. There's honor in struggle. And what I like had taken him to mean now over the years is I've kind of more comprehended what he's saying. And now, or at least what I think of, how I think about struggle now is like, if there is a goal that you definitely want to achieve and you see that there's some unavoidable short-term struggle in between, and then you make a conscious choice like, yeah, that's worth it to me. I'm going to go through that struggle in order to achieve that goal. I think there's honor in that. I mean, I don't want to give up every goal I've ever had if there's any struggle. No, I don't want that. And at the same time, what you risk doing, and I think what I was doing, is then you say, okay, well, see, in that case, there's honor in struggle. Therefore, there's always honor in struggle. And look at me, look how honorable I am. You are almost, even if at least subconsciously, heaping struggle on yourself, because then you get to show how honorable you are. You know what I mean? The honor is, if you have to go through that struggle, sure. But if you can achieve that same goal without that struggle, this stuff from like society or whole something, it's like, oh, well, then that's cutting corners or avoiding struggle. If you can avoid the struggle, you should. You know what I mean? If you can, the goal should be effortlessness. The goal should be, feeling good and being comfortable, and still then achieving these goals. If there has to be struggle, and sometimes saying, no, that struggle is not worth that goal, is a fair thing to decide consciously. Now, you say, well, could that lead to a cop-out? It could, but don't let it. That's the other thing I used to do is like, well, but if I start thinking about self-care too much, it could make me cop out and just be a lazy piece of shit. Okay, so don't. You know what? Yep. There is a place between, and when I turn off my mind, like, well, what's the difference between self-care and laziness? Or what's the difference between not heaping struggle on myself, but also not avoiding struggle? The difference, I can feel the difference in every given situation. If I turn my mind off, get in that centered place like I was talking about, and say, okay, I need to lay down in my bed for like 20 minutes. That's going to make me more productive if I do. Cool. That's good self-care. And when I'm still there after 40, be honest with yourself, be like, all right, hey, bud, that was good. You should probably get up now. You know what I mean? Like, but I would always worry about like, well, if I go down too much with this whole self-care stuff or this whole like avoiding struggle stuff, then what if it makes me lazy? Okay, so don't let it do that. Let it, you know what I'm saying? Just be reasonable with yourself. And I know what that feels like. I can't, think it in theory, in future hypothetical situations. I can feel it every day in each given situation. You know what I mean? So that's been helpful. That's been helpful for me.
I have like two minds about this stuff. I mean, I'm similar to you where like my parents are immigrants, like, there's a strong work ethic culturally, and, they came from like basically like some shitty villages, you know what I mean? And so like they grind hard, and so they're always like, work your ass off. But I'm like, but guys, like you have to make like intelligent decisions to get ahead. You can't just like put your nose to the grindstone. You have to do certain, especially in the modern economy, So I definitely think about that. But a part of me thinks, sorry to keep going, but it's like,
no, sometimes please. Come on. Are you kidding? I've talked a lot. You can have a couple minutes.
Oh, the overemphasis on struggle sometimes, and I'm a unashamed greedy capitalist, but sometimes I do think like the overemphasis on struggle is like a mechanism to keep people locked into work in a way that violates their own identity. And it's like, it's good for people who want to exploit people to portray glory and struggle. It is good. Like, however you feel about hard work, it is good. It is good. And so,
could not agree more. Yeah.
And so like, that's one thing I believe. But then also another thing I believe is that I see my parents, I see how hard I've worked, and I'm pretty happy with like where the business has come. Obviously we have big goals for the future, but it's like, I'm pretty happy at things. And I do see like, one of my beliefs is like, hard work creates competence. Competence creates confidence. Competence creates results. And then results over time, like creates momentum. Like that's how you build a business. Like it all starts with hard work. And so it's like, how do you balance the two?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, it comes back to, I think another way to say what a lot of what we're saying is like, is the hard work the point? Is the struggle the point? Or is the goal the point? And then I'll do the work that is necessary because I want to achieve that goal. But if I can reduce the amount of work it takes, I will. Because that's better. The goal is the goal. The struggle isn't the goal, you know? And that's, I guess it sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but I think like ingrained in our culture is this at least subconscious idea. And I think you're absolutely right about like when I hear people compliment other people as like being a good worker, yeah, that sounds like some capitalist shit to me. Like, yeah, who wants you to, you know, compliment yourself for like working hard and working overtime and working yourself to the bone? The guy who makes money when you work hard. You know what I mean? Like that's,
yes.
I couldn't agree with you more. There's a reason that this has permeated our culture. You know, because there's economic benefit to some of having the whole society be like, yeah, gutting it out and working myself super hard makes me a good person. Like, yes, I don't know.
But then, you know, I think about like, okay, like fitness, let's say as a metaphor, working out as a metaphor, like you do want to expose your body to like controlled stress because then you grow, you know, or like learning an instrument. You learn an instrument and you're really bad at it at first. Then you're like, if you measure like your heart rate variability, your fucking stress levels are through the roof as you're learning. Like, fuck, how come I can't play Hello My Sunshine on the fucking uke? Like, why? This seems so easy. You know, you go through that stress, then you get it after a couple of YouTube videos and you're like, fuck, okay, I got this song. Yeah. To me, it's like, you know, I feel like that's a healthy balance of like you want some stress and then you want enough recovery. And then that's the rhythm of like a productive life is like, you know, you want to work hard, accomplish goals, like you said, recover, keep going. And then like, I don't know, after 20 years, you've done some fucking cool ass shit, you know, like it's cool.
Yeah. No, of course. That's what I mean. Like none of this is to say don't have the goals. It's just to remember that or ambition. It's just to remember that the goals are the point and not the struggle. And that's there. It's like, I want to be really good at playing guitar. So I'm going to practice. And then, but the other thing, it's funny you mentioned the working out analogy, because that's what I use with my team all the time is I talk about like, you know, we want to hit goals and we want to be ambitious and we want to, you know, work hard to meet them. But we want to do it in a way where it's like beating your workout goal, right? Like, I don't know, I'm going to run 3 miles faster than I did before. That's fun. It's fun stress. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't hit it, but you got close, you don't like kill yourself and think you're an awful person. You go back the next day and you do it again. And the act of getting close was still like awesome. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's like that kind of stress is the kind of that. And that's what I say about the tone. It's like, I still want to have the goals and like lofty goals. I'm saying we want millions of people moving billions of dollars through our site to thousands of social enterprises until the day that every business in the world is ultra sustainable and paying amazingly good wages and competing to be better in order to get consumer demand. And we've completely changed the economic systems of the world. So I think my goals are lofty and ambitious. And do I want to work with them like, like drudgery, like I'm working in the mines, or do I want to work like I'm trying to beat a workout? And you know what I mean? And enjoying that process. And if I come to a place where it's like, oh, we're going to have to struggle for 3 days, all day, every day. Nope. We figured out a technical worker. Oh no, there's an app for that makes us not do it. Get the damn app. Make it easier. You know what I mean?
Totally. I'm so in agreement. Like I remember in like the early years of the business, I would work my ass off and basically everybody around me would also be suffering. I'm like, we have to work. This is existential. Like, what are you doing? Yep. What are you doing leaving your desk? Like, go use the bathroom at your desk. I mean, I was like, that's how I was, you know, because the mission is important to you and you're thinking, okay, I have the responsibility of people's paychecks and delivering on them. And to accomplish that, I have to make sure the business succeeds. And so it's like this whole kind of loop where you're just reinforcing this pattern, right? And I've totally been there. But then, I don't know, like, like you sort of like kind of level up in the business or like mentally, spiritually, I'm also a big fan of therapy and also working with like talented people that like are able to be like, hey dude, we all like want to work hard, but like maybe we should sell into the vision versus being like, hey, stay chained to your desk 14 hours a day. And I have found personally that like when you talk about, hey, we're here to do X, Y, and Z, in our case, we're here to make hiring simple, efficient, and human, right? And so for developers, for companies. And so like we want to get as many people hired as possible, get them paid well, get fucking company scale. That's why we exist. And that was so compelling, to people versus like, hey, you work 11 hours today. Why didn't you work 12? Why didn't you work 14?
What are you taking a break? Yeah.
100%.
And it's like, if you take a break, I guess you don't believe in the vision. I mean, that's the thing. I look at ways, especially in the early years where it was like, well, yeah, I mean, it's all because I think what we're doing is good. I think we're working on the most important thing in the world. That's what I think. That's why I did this, right? Because like, so I quit my career to do this of all things because I think like, yeah, if you had a platform that could, funnel huge amounts of consumer demand, that changes economies, that changes the world. That's what we're working on. And so, but at the same time, all this other stuff that I've come to learn about, productivity and take care of yourself, whatever. Like, yeah, if you're then like running people into the ground, it's all about the drudgery. And then, you're not as creative, you're not as on fire. And that's what you realize how, yeah, you're breathing stress into the team. You're inflicting stress on yourself and you're breathing into your team and you're making your team less effective. What if your team is working 9-10 hours, but also they took a couple hour break in the middle of the day and they're super productive and super excited and super on fire and generating more creative shit? Like, it's just going to be like the energy is the most important thing. Like your energy, look, you're going to be down sometimes. You're going to be you feel drudgery sometimes, but the more that you can stay on fire and upbeat and excited, and the more your team stays energized and upbeat and excited. And for that, breaks are needed and vacations are needed. And like, you know what I mean? I mean, it's like that's why I say I'm, back to being a recovering workaholic, because it's like, it's just not, well, the more I do, how much I believe in this cause is measured by how many hours I'm working on it. No, it's not. It's what's the goal and what's the best way to get to the goal. And having some balance, and especially when it's a marathon. I've been doing it 8 years. It's marathon, not sprint.
Yes.
And so to try to create the energy and have more space to be creative and having things feel good, like, it matters.
By the way, this is not an advertisement for Whoop, but do you wear any like health wearables, or have you ever tried any health wearables?
Mm-hmm. Well, I count my steps on my phone. You know what I'm saying? 10,000 steps. I try to get 10,000 steps every day. That's one thing. That movement is good for my mental health too. Like, it's like sleep, number one, movement number two. I learned that during COVID when I was elected. You said you took up hike, and I took up running around the park by my house. I never ran before. I kind of thought running is boring. I like to play a sport or a game, chase a ball. That's fun. Running for nothing. But like during COVID, I was like, I don't feel right if I'm in my house and I get like 1,500 steps in a day.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a couple wearables on the market. They all kind of basically do the same stuff. Apple Watch is one of them. But with these wearables, you can basically monitor like your daily stress level. And it takes like a composite measure by looking at like your heart rate variability, which is like, again, a measure of like how fluidly your heart moves through different like rhythms and beats. And that's a way that they measure stress. And so for a long time, I would like look at like, what did I do that day at work? And like, what's like my stress level? And I would use that as a way to basically like, okay, this is where I feel low stress and highly productive. This is where I feel high stress. And like, I look, okay, if it's like, if I'm like pitching or like I'm selling, like maybe that'll be a little bit higher stress. That's natural. But like, if it's a task that's tedious that I'm doing just because I like haven't delegated it or something, like I've usually used this tool to monitor my own levels of recovery, to like, hey, I'm off today. Maybe I shouldn't make any high stakes decisions. And I will say, like, I see it show up in the business for sure, like in terms of just my efficacy. And you can track how much sleep you get, deep REM, all that stuff. It's like, you can go too deep into this, like too analytical, but I basically just use it to be like, check in with myself. How am I doing? What's my recovery like? And what do I want to kind of push today? And it's really changed sort of how I approach everything from sleep, diet, workout, like everything. So
that's really interesting. And that makes total sense, because I do think that's a big part of it too. Like, whether you talked about like recognizing you're not in a good mind frame, so like not making that big business decision you don't have to. Or I think it's also like talking with your partner or having that fight with your partner, right? It's like
100%.
These things. And that's what I talk about, that your energy and how you feel, that frames whatever, the decision making, the communicating with your colleagues, or, whatever conversation you're about to have. And, like, if you feel good and you're in that better frame of mind, it's all going to go better. And I used to worry a lot about like, wow, I'm going to have this conversation with someone, what words I'm going to use, what am I going to say, and what are the points I'm going to make. And I'm like, if you're in a good frame of mind, of that good energy, that good emotional state, that higher higher
vibration. Yeah.
You know what I mean? The words are going to be just fine. It's 100%. Not going to matter, because the other person's going to feel that you're calm and you have their best interest in mind also, and you're trying to work something out. And the words don't matter. Like, and it's almost like worrying about the words. Like, well, it's all from a good place. I want to be a good and constructive and positive communicator, and I want to make sure that I'm using my I feel language, or like whatever the hell, you know what I mean?
Yes,
but like, it's okay. But then worrying about that stresses you out, and then you're not in as good a spot to have the conversation in the first place. So it's like the things that put you in the worse energy and lower form of consciousness, because now I'm stressed about like, oh, I got to remember to say all these things, like, forget.
Growing up, it's like my parents would be like, okay, if you got to beat it, be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, we should have left you in India. That's like how I grew up, right? And so that's your internal monologue. And so when you're at work and let's say something is not performing the spec, you're not hitting KPIs, it's like that would be my default way to approach a conversation. Like, hey, the fuck are you doing? Like, you think this is acceptable? And that's like how I would operate, right?
Yeah.
And like, then you kind of mature, maybe you have a couple of years working, and you're like, hey, that's probably not a good way to speak to people. And that's just me, right? And so like, it took basically, I'm in this group of other business leaders, and like, we'll simulate crucial conversations. Because I find that most business leaders, most people that have high drive, generally have these types of internal monologues. Like, you can't really go through the suffering without this like fire in you to get your mission done, get your goals done. It takes a lot, right? And it's so high performance athletes. And so, but I think like achieving the next level requires, as you say, like taking the pressure off yourself a little bit, and like taking the pressure off of others in a way that like generates their best self. And so that's been a huge learning area for me over the last 2-3 years.
Yep, I could not agree more. And then I did think, I remember now a long time ago, I said I can connect this back to DoneGood, so I'm going to do that now.
Yeah,
it's the same with like conscious consumerism, where making sure that the dollars you spend are mirroring your beliefs and doing good for the world. That's also like an exhausting practice, right? And I mean, even beyond just how we're spending our money, it's like all the things, right? Like, well, am I recycling? Am I composting? Am I taking public transportation instead of driving the car? Like, there are any infinite number of things we could be doing in any given day to make the world better. And that I had some like drive like that when I was young too. And I was like, yeah, man, like, there are people suffering in the world. Like, what am I doing going on a vacation?
100%.
What am I doing going to a show?
100%.
You know what I mean? And it's like, it's the same kind of thing with that, right? It's like, okay, so I want there to be less suffering in the world. Therefore, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to make sure I suffer,
Yes.
Now, on the other hand, then could I make that be a cop-out? And then I never worry about other people and never worry about other people? Yes, you could. And just like with everything else, then like, where's that sort of that centered place where I feel like, okay, I'm going to be net positive, and I'm going to, I mean, I think like music is important for people's souls also. And we need to like try to make it so that more people are able to access the arts and access music, because that actually, I used to kind of be against the arts when I was young too. It's like, look, man, I know it's all cool, but like people are starving. And it's like, man, but yeah, I mean, the stuff that feeds people's souls that then makes them be more net positive. You know what I mean? Like, what are the things we talk about, the things that inspire me to be good in the world? Like, man, some of that stuff is the more abstract stuff. It is music. It is songs. It's, you know what I mean? Things that like, where you feel like, yeah, I want to be a force for good in the world, And so, and then down to like your spending. I mean, it is like, I drive a car sometimes. I fly on a plane sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so do I think it would be, hey, that's carbon emissions, so everybody should stop flying on planes? And yet I think one of the things that, like, if I could kind of fund one superfluous thing, it might be making every kid in America in high school take a trip abroad, because what helps generate more empathy and connection with other peoples and less fear of the other than like being somewhere. And now, so then it's like, instead of just saying everyone stop doing anything that has any carbon emissions, how do we make these things that plus? How can we make the show, the concert, what if we make it so that, I mean, they're doing this stuff with technology now. What if we make it so that the arena is capturing the heat and the energy of the motion in the dance floor to power the thing, and you can make that a zero waste thing, and a portion of all the tickets are helping local nonprofits. Like, you can set these things up where instead of telling people, don't do things that feed your soul, don't do things that make you happy, it's, oh, I got 20%. Can we create flywheels in the stream of those things? Instead of telling everyone to dress. I mean, look, some areas we should change our behavior. Don't don't leave a ton of trash in the woods. Like, be mindful of your carbon emissions. I mean, I think that's all good. And so change behavior to some degree. And then the things, can we put a flywheel in people's existing streams of behavior, so that when you go, you can go see that band, and that event has net positive impact on the world. Isn't that a better strategy for creating good long term? I think that's the thing, is like, how do we make the things that people already want to do generate positive impacts overall? And so it's the same thing with our purchases, right? It's like, we tell people, like, don't buy anything. You know what I mean? Like, don't buy things, but people probably are still gonna. And like, what if we can create that flywheel where it's like, because if you don't buy anything, the economy collapses, right? Like, we need people who are earning living wages doing things, right? And so it's not about not buying anything. It's about buying a reasonable amount of things. And when you are like, wow, this purchase is helping to create the systemic changes in the economy we need. If you're going to solve climate change, we need systemic change. It's not about like, I'm going to save the carbon on this one thing. It's about, we need businesses, radically different kinds of businesses, and they exist, and there's a movement of them. We need to support those. And so that's what we're doing, right? Trying to create the flywheel in people's existing stream behavior. You like drinking coffee? Cool. We have some that is fair trade, LGBTQ owned, right? You want to dress, if you're living in society and going to work, if you're not doing the van by the river thing, then like, you probably get a nice dressing tomorrow. Cool. We have like a zero waste facility, women earning living wages and being able to bring their kids to work so they don't have to, they can separate the family, things like this. I mean, these companies that are doing amazing things. And then we try to like help people understand, don't feel overwhelmed. I know not 100% of your purchases are going to be on DoneGood or from a secondhand store. First of all, they don't have to be on DoneGood. They can be from a secondhand store. They can be from other things. But like, look, it's the real world. I'm pretty good about, of all people, I'm pretty good about not buying stuff on Amazon. Last time I was at my sister's house, I left my computer charger there. It was her fault. She pulled it in half. It was a two-part thing. I grabbed the one half, left the other half. So I just want to say it was her fault that I forgot that computer charger. Anyway, I called 3 places in Denver. They don't have it. I got to order it on Amazon. For me to be able to power my computer to keep fighting Amazon, well, I got to order a thing from Amazon. You know what I'm saying? Or I have little kids in my life. They're like, what do they want for Christmas? They want some plastic from China. I go to Target, or if I forget, I only have a few days left, maybe on Amazon. Like, it's not about being perfect. I talked about before how 2% of our spending, right? If 2% of our spending equals all the donations to all the nonprofits in the country. So it's just like, if you're moving 20% of your spending, you're doing 10x better than what we need everybody to do. And then, maybe you're doing 50%, maybe you're doing 80%. And then you start to realize, I don't need Amazon as much as I think. And like, but if you still, I don't care. You know what I mean? It's not about perfection. I think people with all this stuff, we like think, well, it's too hard. It's too hard to do it all. Okay, good. Then don't do it all. I'll do 40%, man. Like 40% is a huge impact. And then you just like beating that workout goal. You find like, I can do 50%. And then that feels good. And then it's just 60%. So instead of like, I think we beat ourselves up over the stuff we're not doing or that unsustainable thing that we did, or like, I left the car running. You know what I'm saying? Like that was carbon emissions. And it's like, it gets so exhausting for people. They feel like they can't do it, or they get too tired and give up. Or so it's like, look, man, just do some. Just move some of your purchases again to DoneGood. Obviously, we appreciate it. Helps us stay alive. Or to secondhand stores, or what you can do, or buy less. Buy less, you know. While we don't need as much stuff as we think, that's true too. And I, like I said, I think that's all a balance, because I really want this movement of social enterprises to succeed. I think the world depends. The hope of the world, to me, is why I do this. Depends on them succeeding. So don't buy nothing. We need them to succeed, you know. And so. It's just it's all of this stuff is like, and I guess it's back to the tone, like we were talking about. It's feeling good about what you're doing, the progress you're making, setting that workout goal to do a little better, as opposed to, I suck. I'm beating myself, you know, like I did this bad thing, I did that bad thing. Like, okay, shit, man, you're not going to be able to do everything. It's infinite. And you're a human being, so you're going to have some carbon emissions. The only way to have zero emissions, you know, is off yourself. But like, why are we saving the planet? So it can be a place where people can be happy. Right? Like the planet's going to be fine. The rock's going to be here. I don't know if you saw David Attenborough's recent documentary, but like these, like it's Chernobyl 30 years later. The planets are back. Foxes are running free. Like he's like, there's been mass extinction events. It doesn't go fully extinct. Just most things go extinct. And then a new evolutionary path comes up. The planet and living things here are going to be fine. We're talking about, can we keep this a place where humans can live and be happy with less suffering? Isn't that the goal? Anyway, all right.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah. Where can people find DoneGood on the interwebs? Where can people find you on the interweb?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for asking the plug questions. DoneGood.com, you know, DoneGood, just the words, DoneGood.com, DoneGood.com. That's our site. And then, the crowdfunding campaign I mentioned again, go to startengine.com. That's the crowdfunding site that we're raising on. And again, even small donations are a huge help, because they help us hit goals that get us to, or small investments, rather, I should say. Small investments help because they help us hit goals that get us more promotion to the crowdfunding site. And if this is airing, we're taping it a little bit ahead. I think this is airing about 3 days left in our crowdfunding campaign or so. So it's like, you know, not to be all advertising or anything, but go today, do it now. You know what I'm saying? If you want to do it, like do it, because you'll forget, and it'll be like there's only a few days left in the thing. That's startengine.com, or again, I think it's startengine.com/offering or offerings. I really should have known that before I got on here, but startengine.com/offerings/DoneGood, or you can just go to startengine.com and search DoneGood in the search bar. You'll find us there. So we really appreciate the investments there. That they all help us to do a little more good for the world, grow our community, help more people make more purchases that fight climate change. Every purchase helps someone lift themselves out of poverty. So we think it's, you know, like I said, we think it's a good cause if you were donating $100, but it's an investment, and it gets you discounts on our site too. So anyway, to do that, like you said, though, most of your audience is entrepreneurs, like they get like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to plug my thing, you know, and when we do stuff too, I always try to like, I just try to like say straight up, like, okay, yeah, you're an entrepreneur, like go ahead. Here's your opportunity to just do the shameless plug, man. Like it's cool. Tell us about your thing. That's why you're here, you know? So I guess that's some of that Midwest Protestant stuff too, that like, I'm talking about myself and my thing too much. So yeah, that's why you're here, man. Sell it.
100%. That is your obligation and your right as a founder of a company. So it's both, you know?
Thanks for listening to the Frontier Podcast powered by Gun.io. We drop 2 episodes per week. So if you like this episode, be sure to subscribe on your platform of choice and come hang out with us again next week and bring all your internet friends. If you have questions or recommendations, just shoot us a Twitter DM at The Frontier Pod, and we'll see you next week.